back to the PSU Big Apple podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Bonner. And for today's episode, I have the pleasure of introducing meteorologist Maria LaRosa, Penn State class of 1998. Maria, thank you so much for being on the show. It's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing?
It's so great to be here, Aaron. Thank you for having me. Doing well.
Well, thanks for getting on here. And again, like we were just chatting, it's super nice out today. It's a beautiful March day. And I just wanted to start by asking you, what is it like to be on the news, on the weather channels, explaining everything when it's such an unexpected day like this? I mean, is that a
Yeah.
super cool highlight of your day?
It's always nice to talk about nice things, and especially the February that we're coming off of, to give a couple of bits of good news every now and then, because I think everybody can agree that this is good news. I love the snow, I love winter, and I can appreciate how nice it feels outside. So yeah, it's fun to have fun, especially again after the winter that we've had.
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild winter, especially for me. I love being outside. So for today, it was like super ironic and awesome that it's so nice out, and having a meteorologist on the episode, it was just like the stars are aligning. It's so cool.
Well, I extra appreciate you taking time out on a Friday afternoon, then, on a gorgeous Friday afternoon.
Oh, I mean, I'm glad to. I'm super excited to get into your story and kind of learn more about you. And in fact, I'd love to kind of dive into it and learn about the beginning chapter of your life, maybe where you grew up, and then how you managed to end up at Penn State.
Well, it's an interesting story. I often tell people that I've sort of stumbled my way through this life. A lot of happy accidents got me to Penn State, and a lot of happy accidents have happened after to make it a pretty interesting ride. But I was born in Mahopac, New York, which is Putnam County, Hudson Valley. Moved to New Jersey when I was 7, to Ramsey, New Jersey, northern New Jersey, where I grew up. Went to high school, and was one of those kids. I was pretty quiet. I think on one of my report cards, I remember the teacher commenting, "She's really quiet. She doesn't really talk," which is kind of interesting considering what I do now for a living. But I was always really interested in math and science. And when I got to high school, I knew that's kind of the direction I was going to go eventually when I went to college. But I had no other direction. If you've ever spoken with other meteorologists, like 95% of them have some story that, when they were 5, I was in this blizzard and I knew right then I wanted to be a meteorologist. I don't have one of those stories. I had no idea really that meteorologists existed, except, on TV. And that was just to give me the forecast. I didn't really think much more about that as far as a career for me, for sure.
Right.
But when I was looking for colleges and universities, I was lost. And the only guidance that my parents kind of gave me, like solid guidance, was they basically gave me a protractor, drew a circle, 5-hour radius around Ramsey, New Jersey. Said, just pick something in here, so you don't need a plane ticket to come home.
Right.
And so that was a starting point. And Penn State ended up being, I still can't remember what made me apply to Penn State, but I did. It was one of those kind of like, okay, the pictures look nice. You get the pamphlets. Now you can research everything online, but I just decided to make that one of my applications. And long story short, I went to visit the campus with one of my friends, not even my parents. Again, this is crazy when you think about how parents pick out schools with their kids these days. I mean, I went with my friend, we were 18. And it was a beautiful day. The campus was packed and people were on the quad. And then I went back and visited a smaller school in New Jersey. And I was like, that one looks way more fun.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I picked Penn State. And it was one of those things where it was huge. And I had no idea. And I said, I'm bound to find something here, with so many options and choices. So that's kind of my way into Penn State. Very, very random.
Yeah, I mean, I've as an alum and as a Penn State fan, and now doing this podcast, everyone has their own unique story. Like, I haven't come across, it's such a huge school, and especially in the Northeast, there's a lot of people that you can kind of interact with unexpectedly, but still, everyone still has their own unique story, whether it's, family members have gone there, or they stumbled upon it, or I mean, just going with your friend there probably made it seem so much more interesting and special.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
obviously, you clearly fell in love with the school and had a really great experience. What was it like freshman year, 1995? Would it be
94. Yeah.
94? Okay.
Well,
So
yeah.
what was it like? I mean, I was 5 years old, and I know like LeVar Arrington was like a huge linebacker, and I would go up for games and stuff. But it was like a whole different experience. I'm assuming, like in the '90s compared
Yeah.
to now. Can you paint a picture of freshman year and kind of finding your way?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was in the Kajana Carter years.
Okay, gotcha.
um, yeah. It was it was overwhelming. I also have a pretty interesting freshman year story too. I was put in temp housing. So I was in a study lounge in Center Halls with 8 other freshmen. And, throughout the first semester, we were all kind of like placed in different spots. By the end of the semester, there were only 4 of us left. And I hadn't gotten placed into a dorm yet. So
Wow.
that in itself was kind of definitely a rough start, I think, because you're not in East Halls with, where everybody's a freshman. It was, it was a tough start, I think, for me that way. But otherwise it was a little overwhelming. It was so big. I hadn't really gone far outside of Ramsey, and I went to school with people I've known practically my whole life up to that point. So but what was wonderful was that I pretty quickly found meteorology and the Walker Building and focus as far as what my academics would be turn out to be. I was trying to figure out my major, what I was going to follow, and I
Hmm.
happened to read a description of meteorology, and it had all of the subjects that I was really interested in. Obviously, the math, physics, and chemistry, geography, all these things. And I said, well, let me check it out. And I visited the Weather Center, and it was one of those kind of light bulb moments. I walk in, and again, if you've met meteorologists, especially ones at Penn State, they're super excited about everything weather. And you walk into that, and how can you not want to be in there and
Yeah.
as excited as they are? And so I found sort of this little place in this big place. And I think that helped by the second semester being part of that group finally, and given, some focus and direction and that kind of thing. So that was sort of my first semester. And then the second semester I was down in South Halls, and no, I loved everything about the campus, and learning as sort of this, how I found Penn State kind of randomly, everything about the football team and the sports history and the creamery and all
Yeah.
of those things that, you find along the way that make Penn State really, really special. So that was kind of my first year in a nutshell, sort of finding my way and focus and falling in love with the campus in real time.
Of course. Yeah. I think it's an adventure every step of the way, freshman to senior year or beyond. And there's so much to explore. And
Hmm.
the weird thing is, like, everyone's experience at the school is probably significantly different. I would say maybe like your freshman year, just going through electives and kind of doing the freshman thing.
Hmm.
But then beyond that, once you kind of find your way, I was a College of Comms graduate, so like I kind of huddled around there, and like I never explored the meteorology department and the science department, but I know for a fact like it's like an exciting campus, especially for that. I mean, I've
Yeah.
heard great, exciting things come out of Penn State in that department, and obviously, like with your career, that's where it all started, and
Hmm.
it's really cool. So like, I'm I'm a big weather like I don't know, I wouldn't say like a buff, but I like definitely think it's exciting when things happen all over the world.
Hmm.
What kind of like what are you learning when you're going through to be, did you know you wanted to be on camera and a meteorologist in school, and do they have classes for that, or is it kind of like a generic science hybrid of all different stuff? What is like the curriculum like for someone on that path?
Yeah. Well, back in my day, there was basically, I guess you could say, just the meteorology. Now you have all of these different amazing ways you can focus differently than just meteorology. So my broadcasting meteorology experience was one semester my senior year. So there wasn't that focus. If you go there now, and you should, Aaron, it's the Weather Center's amazing. It's so high tech, and these students are so lucky. There's so much there, so much offered, all these different nooks and crannies that you can get into aside from the broadcast aspect. But when I was there, you got into the math and the science behind forecasting and meteorology pretty quickly. It was way more than just, a guy on a TV talking about fronts and high pressures. And that was the coolest part of it for me, to understand how the equations were developed and how these equations have turned into these incredible computer models that can give us an idea of what the weather's going to be like 7 hours from now, 7 days from now, 7 months from now. So that was really, really cool. And then, kind of like you said, this is an experience as you go, and you find out all these incredible people who not only went to Penn State and meteorology, but are there as your teachers.
Right.
You learn the history of these people, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're brilliant, and I'm here learning from you. Like, coming to mind is Dr. Greg Forbes. He worked under Dr. Fujita, who of course developed the Fujita scale for tornadoes. And here I am in his class. And then you fast forward several years down the road, and I ended up
Wow.
working at the Weather Channel, which is just incredible. But the curriculum was challenging. It was every science you can think of, really, into one major. I mean, I did obviously chemistry and physics, and a lot of calculus, a lot of math.
Wow.
Yeah, and then you can get into the nitty gritty, like mesoscale meteorology, where you're dissecting, individual supercell thunderstorms, and then you're talking about natural disasters like tsunamis, which you don't think of as weather, but is the whole Earth system. So it was fascinating and interesting and challenging for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you said a lot of things that even I'm just like, this is just beyond what I can even compute. I'll be the first to admit, calculus definitely not my forte. Science is not, but looking back, it's so interesting to see how all these different, you know, I guess like this curriculum kind of relates to what a person does, and I just
Yeah.
never, you look online at the weather and you watch the forecast and see how it affects your life, but you don't really think like how much science goes behind that. Like you think science, especially right now with like COVID and vaccines, like your health, all that stuff, but like there's such a really cool science behind the weather, and I think it's really really interesting.
And I mean, from when I was in school to now, the science is, light years ahead of what it was even when I was there. And to think about what the kids are learning now, and how they're learning, it's I'm a little jealous. You know, you want to go back, like, I'll be a better student. Let me come back.
Yeah, it's really. I mean, I graduated in 2011, and that was kind of the the dawn of social media and YouTube, and kind of like really the huge push on information and learning. But back then, like, just the technology wasn't there to be able to do all these different things so quickly, so accurately, for so many different industries and disciplines. But it's just exciting to see how we've progressed. And
Yeah.
I will definitely I appreciate forecasting, because it just has an impact on everything from if you're going to take an umbrella or what you're going to wear to go on the train to go to work, but also to like huge like national snowstorms that shut things down. Like it's a huge part of our lives that I definitely I kind of geek out with my friends sometimes about the weather. So
I
um,
love that. I
yeah,
love that.
it's
Totally.
it's I was going to talk about this later, but I mean, what is it about the weather that kind of gets people like excited and kind of like, I don't know, like I don't know, like I get like text messages of these crazy like maps and scales and expectations of snowfall, and like what do you think it is about the weather that gets people like amped up?
Um, well, I mean, I can speak for myself, sort of, what gets me excited. I think it's also that everybody experiences it. It's not exclusive to me. And you can look up and see things happening and moving. And I think everyone has a favorite type of weather. So you sort of have a claim on something. You own part of that weather. Yeah, I think it's just that it affects everybody and everything, kind of like you said, whether or not you're going to wear your Penn State fleece today, or
Right.
if you could leave it at home, or, you're planning your outdoor wedding or something like that. It's every facet of life has some tie back to the weather.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's I'm planning my own wedding now, and it's not outside completely, but like that's a huge implication, and it just affects every day of life, every person, and that's why it's on all the time. Like there's no turning the weather off. Like it is what it is. So
Exactly.
I guess like transitioning from Penn State, so you graduate and you're like, where are you now? What are you gonna do? Like, how does that kind of play out upon graduation?
Yeah, I was a late bloomer for a lot of things, including where I was going to go to school, what I was going to major. It took time for me, and it took a lot of time for me to figure out what I was going to do with this amazing degree. And I remember talking with my dad pretty often, and he'd be like, "So, what do you think you're going to do with this?" And I'd be like, "Oh, well, probably National Weather Service." Like TV again was not at all something I was even thinking about. And I was part of the campus weather service, which would do radio weather forecasts for radio stations across the region. And we had one night an evening gathering, and one of the guest speakers was a TV meteorologist from Philadelphia, Larry Cosgrove. And he was just talking about his career and how he got into it. It was one of those things like, yeah, I'll go and check it out, see what's going on. And he happened to see me. He grabbed me afterwards and said, you should really think about going into TV. And I was like, I don't know. He gave me his name and number and said, you're close to me in Philly. Come do an internship. Just check it out. Give it a try. I ended up doing an internship with him for the summer. And I wasn't terrible, because he would put me up in front of the camera and, gave me some pointers and that kind of thing. And I made a tape, and I kind of had fun. And so I said, okay, well, maybe there's something to this. And so then I sort of pursued that and kept that in my mind, like, okay, well, maybe I need to start thinking about that route. And I ended up taking the broadcast meteorology. It was like 1 credit course, but really interesting. Again, got you time in front of the green screen. And it was, I made a tape there. This is, again, back in my day, the VHS tape. Um, yeah. So once I graduated, I just started sending out tapes everywhere. And Larry Cosgrove was really wonderful for me then because he was so connected in the business and said, "Oh, I'm hearing there's an opening here. Start in this, start in this market, try over here." I probably sent out 25 tapes after graduation and nothing. Like, I think I got maybe five actual responses like, "Thanks, but no thanks." And so I was really freaking out.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I have this amazing degree and I'm graduated and I'm ready, but maybe I'm not ready. So I ended up calling one of my friends who was working at Enterprise Rent a Car. And I said, "Listen, I'm out of school now a couple months and I need to work." So she was able to get me an interview. And the day that they called me back and offered me a position, I got a call from a news director in Columbus, Georgia, my one and only phone call. And he's like, "Hey, I saw your tape. Really interested. Do you think you'd be able to come down and meet and have a chat?" I said, "Okay." And then after I got off the phone with him, I grabbed a map and I was like, "Where's Columbus, Georgia?" And the rest is history. That was my first job. I went down there with my dad. My dad met my news director. It was, of course, you think again, this day and age that happening, but my first boss, news director, Mark McGee, wonderful. And I think I credit him for one, giving me a chance, but also being one of those bosses who you look back and you're like, wow, he really made a difference on my life, my career. I think about him all the time and things that he taught me and what I learned on that job. So that was kind of my post graduation first few months. It was panic.
Yeah.
And then sort of relief, and then panic again because I'm moving to Columbus, Georgia, which is about 2 hours south of Atlanta. And it was about Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think my first day on air was Thanksgiving. So
Wow.
it was just, yeah, it was overwhelming, but
That's awesome. I mean,
I,
you it depends. Like sometimes things just kind of line up and sometimes they don't, like
mhm,
with things. And um I love that there's a ton, like our network, not that Penn State has anything to do with you getting the for your first job, but you have so many options coming out of Penn State, and specifically with this, I mean, there's so many television networks and local news channels, and just to think like that one in Georgia has led to this, and so on and so forth, and then
yeah.
ultimately, I mean, to the Weather Channel, the holy
Mhm.
grail of weather news. So can you like explain to me how you transition? You kind of got your meteorologist legs and started at the Weather Channel.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, again, I remember as an undergrad watching the Weather Channel and not processing that that was the career path I wanted to choose. But it was, of course, one of those things that everybody watched the Weather Channel. That was, what everybody in meteorology did at that point at school. So um, after Columbus, Georgia, I ended up in Cincinnati. I was in Cincinnati at a Fox affiliate for 3 years, and then I jumped over to Philadelphia, a CBS affiliate there. I was there for about 6 years, and I had, I guess it was. I'm trying to remember if it was between Cincinnati and Philly. I had interviewed at the Weather Channel, but I had it in my head that I wanted to end up back in the Northeast. That was my home. I wanted to end up there somehow. My boyfriend, now husband's from the Northeast. He's a Penn Stater as well. So it was all part of sort of the bigger plan to kind of get back that way. And of course, the Weather Channel, not in the Northeast. So I was not too keen at that point in my life to head back down there. But when I was in Philadelphia, like so many people, you have contracts and contracts come up, the end of the contracts, and you have to, figure out what you're going to do, if you're going to stay, if you're going to go, if they're going to keep you, or if they're going to let you go, you don't know.
Right.
And my agent was like, "So the Weather Channel called and they're interested and they'd love to, talk with you." And at the time, I just found out that I was expecting my third baby. I was like, this is the worst time to possibly think about moving to Atlanta. But you kind of have to get out there, and because you never know in this business what's going to happen. So I went, and it was another one of those moments. You walk in the door there, and it was like, holy cow, this feels right, and I think I need to be here.
Wow.
And so I ended up accepting the position down there and moved down there. I was working about a month, had a baby, and came back. It was crazy, a really crazy, crazy time. But if you know anything about the Weather Channel, obviously it's full of weather enthusiasts and meteorologists, and it was so much fun to be in that environment, because in news, you're fighting for your time in many ways, and weather is the 3 minutes here or the minute and a half there, and this is all they do. And not to mention chock full of lots of Penn Staters.
Yeah.
So that was fantastic. So I got to do so much there beyond what I ever thought I'd be able to do as a meteorologist, aside from tell really cool weather stories in front of, a map. I got to do all kinds of things on the national level, which was awesome and exciting.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear that story and how it evolved, and life happens, and you never know how the puzzle pieces are going to fit together, but I'm glad that it worked out. So at this point, you've had experience on several different kind of local stations, and now at this national level. What is it like for me? I've never been on a television set. I have no clue how any of it works. I'm literally stuck to my living room as of this last year with my webcam, and like I feel pretty tech savvy, but like I can't imagine everything that goes into producing the weather and the news related to the weather, and segment after segment, and the timing and the team and everything. I mean, it's all for this one moment that people get 10 minutes or 20 minutes that they watch, and then it's on to the next thing and the next day. But it must mean something really special to be able to put that together day after day. And I'd love to hear kind of what that story is like day in and day out.
Yeah. It's well, specifically the Weather Channel, it is a huge operation. So many talented, really smart people that help me once when I'm on the air for those few hours, make me look pretty good. I get to work with incredible graphic artists who make those incredible graphics that you see. I mean, the technology now, if you've watched, there's a lot of the augmented reality, which is just mind-blowing. But all of the forecasters, and what's interesting too with a network like the Weather Channel, you have news producers, and these news producers happen to be big weather geeks, which is why they're working there. So you have them producing a show, and you always have something to talk about, especially on the national level. There's always something big happening somewhere, for the most part. And so you get to pull all of these different weather stories, and as a meteorologist and a presenter, that gets pretty exciting too, because being in local, you're sort of your little local expert, and you talk about your one zone, and most news directors and producers don't want you spending too much time talking about the mudslides in California if you're in New York. But you do kind of get to sort of stretch your science legs and your meteorology outside of one city, because you get to talk about everything going on across the country. But it does take a huge village to make that happen. So there's a whole team of forecasters, and it's sort of their job to consolidate the weather story and sort of present it as a group, right? So you're not getting a different forecast in the morning, and then if you tune in the afternoon. So that's a sort of a unique thing too with an operation like the Weather Channel. It really is a very put together and solid effort to communicate that clearly and as a team and as a unit. But as far As far as the technical logistics, I mean, you're running 24 hours pretty much, and so there's multiple control rooms, and so you have one team in one control room that passes it off to another control room, and yeah, it's a pretty neat operation.
Yeah, I mean, it's so for someone who's putting together little things like this. All the effort that goes into it is truly amazing, and TV has evolved into, like you said, these like holographic images that are like sitting next to someone that says the forecast for the next 10 days. And
Right.
it's just, could you have imagined, like, back when you graduated, that this is what it would be like? I mean, what were your expectations coming out of that, and then now sitting in the position you're in? I mean, is it just surreal?
Well, I mean, I would think I was a couple years ahead of, like, the felt sun on the board, right? Technology wise, back to my first job, right? And it is really amazing what can be done right now in terms of weather presentation. I mean, they're literally taking um, technology from the gaming world, right, to make
Wow.
weather graphics and communicate weather and forecasts, and it's really unbelievable. And just a sidebar, my first newsroom, I didn't have voicemail, and there was one internet computer in the newsroom. So we didn't even have our own computers. I'm definitely dating myself there, but yeah, there was one computer in the newsroom hooked up to the internet, and that was it.
Wow.
So to see how things are operating now, and I got to visit the Weather Center a couple years ago, and the students there, and specifically the ones that were kind of focusing on the broadcast meteorology part of it, they had better TV editing equipment in there than most of my stations that I've worked for, which I think is so awesome and incredible. The things that I had to learn on the job, they're learning now and then some.
Yeah.
I mean, light years ahead of where I was. They'll be at graduation compared to where I was, and it's remarkable what they have at their fingertips. It's pretty
Right.
cool. Again, I'm super jealous.
Well, yeah, and like, I mean, it's that experience that you can get at school, or in an education setting that is equivalent or better than like everyone says, like internships, hands-on experience, like getting your first job, like
Mhm.
that's like the experience that is important. But when you're dealing with these kind of technologies in the classroom, I mean, how much better can you be prepared? I mean, other than
Yeah.
you can't really mess up. I guess if you do, then people are a little bummed out. But it's so cool that there's that experience firsthand that you can. The technology's there for these students. It's awesome.
Yeah. 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 And, internships are obviously still really great. One of my former interns, I actually ended up working with.
Oh wow,
So, yeah. Yeah. And a Penn Stater, of course. Yeah. So
nice.
the connections are always important.
Yeah. Um, wow, that's awesome. And I guess I have to, I'm geeking out on this technology thing because I know, I mean, how hard is it to, like, do you get used to it by, I'm assuming you're looking at a monitor, right? When you're showing the weather, it's a green screen, right? And then
Yeah.
you're looking at what you look like in front of this screen, except there's maps and there's weather fronts and all this stuff coming in. Is that how it works? And then is it
Yeah.
really hard to get used to, or is it kind of like a riding a bike?
Yeah, it's definitely riding a bike. It's practice like anything else, and it's kind of funny that you brought that. That's one part of the technology that really hasn't changed. I From when I was a student, you have two monitors on either side, and the monitor in front of you with the camera, and you're watching yourself basically do the weather, so you know where to point the hands, and that hasn't changed. That's exactly what I
Wow.
do.
Nice. That's cool. So I saw a really heartwarming tribute from when you left the Weather Channel, and it really struck a chord. And I know that being there for so long must have meant a lot. And for you to come, back up into the Northeast, what was it like to kind of part ways, but take that chapter and I'm sure hold it forever with you and then head back up Northeast.
Yeah. Yeah. Lifelong friends, it was hard because you knew you were at a special place. You were in a place that so many people hope to get to, and you're there and then you're leaving. It was hard. It was really hard. But I have three boys. All my family's up here. My husband's family's up here, and it just felt like it was time. And the kids were young enough that, if we pulled them now, it was going to be. It was a lot of it was timing, and it just felt like the right time. So I kind of had to listen to that inner voice. But we've been talking about, sometimes what happens to me in my life is kind of dumb luck. I was expecting to sort of retire from TV weather. I figured, this is it. I've worked here. I've done it all, and
Yeah.
I'm ready maybe for something else. And I just felt that need to get home. And so I was a stay-at-home mom for like 3 months pretty much. And it was great. And I love it. And I loved it. And I loved that time. And my agent happened to call me one day, and he says, you're here. You could freelance and, pick the days you want to work, and, or say no. And I said, okay, that sounds pretty good. And so I did that for a while. And my first freelance job was filling in for Dylan Dreyer on the Today Show, on the weekend Today Show. And back when I was early days of Weather Channel, for me, it was partly under the NBC umbrella. So there was a lot of sharing of talent between NBC and Weather Channel. I've gotten to fill in for Al Roker a few times while I was at Weather Channel. So I knew a lot of people, and they knew me. And so it was great.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to freelance a few times at WNBC, and I did that, and it was wonderful. And then this opportunity came up, and, again, I had to think really hard. Like, I have this new life, and I'm home with the kids, and I'm loving it. And I'm also keeping my toes dipped into, the TV weather, and it's wonderful. But then it's like, this is my hometown. Am I crazy? This is my hometown. Of course. Yes. Please, this is amazing opportunity. And so that's how I got to WNBC in New York. And it's been wonderful, more than I could have hoped for at the time, where I thought I was ready to kind of be done with TV weather. I've gone into it with sort of fresh eyes, and it's been so much fun. And, I'm related to like 90% of the tri-states. So all my cousins and my aunts and my uncles and everybody. It's really been fun.
Yeah, it has to be nice to, you've made the full loop, and you're back in the Northeast, you're back home,
Yeah.
and you still have that kind of itch that you get to scratch in the weather
Yes.
world, and your family, and you can't ask for any more than that. I mean, that's super special. It has to be.
It's
Wow.
it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, I mean, everything's come full circle. What kind of advice would you share with people who may want to get into meteorology? Or, I mean, now you said there's so many new segments. I mean, what's the exciting thing? How would you kind of express your, I guess, your experience, or what would you provide any kind of new students or fans that would want to get into a career like this? Just like some advice.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can't go wrong with, you can't go wrong with Penn State meteorology as a starter, right?
Right.
You're going to be good with that choice. Yeah. I think I look back, and I wish I took advantage more of what was there and available. Like I said, I was kind of this quiet, kind of hang back type of person when I was younger. And I think I could have taken advantage more of the resources that Penn State offered. And not even just with meteorology, just as the, university as a whole. So if I could give some advice, I would say, ask a lot of questions, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and just say yes if given an opportunity to try something new. And that's, I would say, good advice, whether as a student or as a professional. Because I definitely realized once I started working that, I have to broaden the horizons and do things that are uncomfortable and see what happens. And it's really served me well in my career. I've gotten to do a lot of things that, again, I never thought I would ever get to do. And it's because I said, well, I'm not sure about this, but okay, let's see what happens. Let's do it. And I think maintaining connections is huge. I have well, as you know too, the Penn State community as a whole is amazing. And then within this little family of Penn State meteorology, the list of people I have connected to just through the Penn State meteorology, not even directly people that I've graduated with, but many classes. It's been such a good thing to maintain those connections and nurture them and put time into them, and because you're in this special little family, I guess, within the bigger Penn State family, which itself is amazing. So that would probably be my advice. Just ask a lot of questions, get involved, take advantage of everything there while you have it, because it's very special. It's a really special place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's really sound advice, and yeah, that's awesome. If so, Penn State has the "We Are" Penn State has "We Are." Do you have a personal mantra that you kind of live by? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but or I mean, you kind of said it, like, take action when there's an opportunity. Be kind of engaged, and don't let an opportunity slip by.
Yeah.
But I had to throw it out there.
Say yes. Give everything a try. You may lose a little time, or get a little uncomfortable, and maybe it's not the right route, but for sure you're going to find out, even if it's not the right route, that's one more thing about yourself.
Right.
And that could be very helpful down the road too. I know that that's the case for me. There are plenty of things that I tried and I was like, definitely not. I'm going to set the course a different way now. But that was helpful because now I know.
Right. Well, I loved hearing your story. It's really exciting to kind of speak to a meteorologist firsthand. It's my first time I've ever spoken to somebody in this field, let alone someone like you who's had her fingers in so many different sides of this industry and the weather. It's super cool. Is there anything else that you'd like to share, plug, projects you're working on, things to look out for, social media? I mean, the floor is yours.
Oh, well, first of all, we're totally friends now. So when you're planning your outdoor wedding, give me a call.
I will.
I will probably persuade you from having it outside.
Yeah, that's a little scary, but I'll definitely see what you think.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm at WNBC. I am part of the Today New York morning team. So for the night owls out there, I'm on starting at 4 a.m. We run through 7 a.m. Have a ball. It's a lot of fun. And you can find me on Twitter, the Maria LaRosa. And I'm on Instagram at Maria_LaRosa_WX. I guess that's all that I have to plug for now, but hopefully, tune in if you can. Channel 4, NBC.
Cool.
Does that sound fashion? It's not Channel 4, I guess, anymore. It's not as simple as Channel 4.
Yeah, I mean, check her out. It was so fun. I loved learning about all this stuff. I definitely will hit you up when I get married to see what you think the weather will be like that day. But once again, Maria, thank you so much for being a part of the show. I really appreciated it, and looking forward to seeing how this weather warms up now that we're in kind of almost spring mode today.
Yeah, just ignore next week, but I guarantee a warm up come May or June.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
I'm probably gonna edit this in, but I forgot to ask you, what's your favorite piece of weather? I mean, is
Oh,
there any kind of like thing you like to talk about or think is like super crazy or interesting?
I love blizzards. I love winter. I love snow. I love being in one. I love watching it evolve on the computer models, on the satellites, the structure of them. It's fascinating. I don't necessarily like forecasting them, like who's go where the the 2 foot snow line is versus 3 inches. Like
Yeah.
that's the least fun part of it. But I find all of every other aspect of it super fascinating. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
again one reason why I really wanted to come back to the Northeast. I couldn't handle maybe 3 inches of snow a year. I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've lived here my whole life in PA and New York, and it's kind of been a part of my, seasonally. It's like, okay, like last year we didn't get a lot, this year we got a lot. But I
Yeah,
agree. Like, there's nothing more exciting than you're getting when a big snowstorm's about to like hit. It's just like, but
yeah.
now we're all, at least for me and a lot of kids. I mean, I used to love growing up and like waiting for like the ticker to go across the screen to see if we have a 2 hour
Oh,
delay. That was like the most fun thing.
and they've taken that away now. My kids get texts on their phone. They know before me. they don't they don't have to stay up, or they don't have to. We used to have in Ramsey, the fire station would sound the horns,
Yeah.
and you would hear like a 3 pulse thing on the morning of the snowstorm, and you're like, yes, school is
Wow.
canceled. Well, it's a new life for them.
Yeah. Now it's just, you just get a text now and it's like, I
Yeah.
feel like such an old head. Like I loved that, like the
Oh
ticker,
my.
like, and mine was T, so you'd have all the S's go
Oh,
first, and it was like, there's so many S's.